Okay, Jessica, thank you for being here. You are the founder of Hi-Lite Coaching.
Yes,
Okay,
I did that.
tell us a little bit about your coaching practice.
We work with teens and young adults to help them be successful in their lives. So we help answer three key questions. Who am I? What do I want? How can I make it happen?
How did you come into this line of work?
Well, it's kind of twofold. So when I was a young teenager myself, I didn't know who I was, what I wanted, or how I could get there.
Mm-hmm.
I come from a pretty rough childhood. Moved 27 times by the time I graduated high school. Both of my parents were unavailable to me when I was in high school due to personal choices. So I've lived with my grandmother all of high school, but the majority of my life growing up back and forth with my grandma. And then when I moved into the corporate world, after graduating college with 365 credits, that's a different story. We won't bring that in now. But when I was in the corporate world, I interviewed, I trained and mentored a lot of young people. And I noticed that even young people in their mid 20s, early 30s still didn't have answers to those questions. And I thought, man, what would it be like to go back to their teenage selves and help them create these realizations in their lives? Like, who am I? What do I want? What direction should I go in? How can I get there? How can I build a framework around that? How can I be a leader in my life starting now without waiting for the formal permission of graduating high school, graduating college, getting an actual leadership role? How can I take control and sit in the driver's seat? And during the pandemic, I lost my job in supply chain logistics and kind of sat down and figured out who I was, why people hired me, what people sought me out for, connected all those things, and realized, hey, our young people are really struggling and they need some resources. And I spun up Hi-Lite. I still worked in my corporate job and I did coaching a little bit on the side. And then some really, really sad things started happening around me in my community with young people. And I was like, forget it. We got to do this full time. So that's how Hi-Lite came to be born. Never thought I would be doing anything like this, but it is literally the most exciting thing I've ever done with my life.
Wow, I'm inspired. You said something to the effect of kids are struggling, young people don't know what they want. Why is that?
I think it's a few things. There's not a formal passing of the torch when you go from childhood to adolescence, right? There's not a formal passing of the torch as a parent. So you're doing like this funny little tango, like with your parents and also with your social life. And as things are developing around you and you're learning different things about yourself, you're doing this funny little dance of, do I have control? Do I not have control? Can I make this decision? Do I have a sense of agency? I don't think I do. I still have to ask permission for things. So it's just a very awkward space in life. And I think that a lot of young people don't know who they are and like can't really connect with what they want because they don't at their very like basic space in their head know what their values are.
Okay.
And when we know what our values are and we have like a coach like yourself or myself that kind of mirrors it back to them and challenges them to show up better as their values so that they can get the results they want in life, things change. The conversation changes in your head. The conversation changes with your parents, changes with your peers and your teachers. It's a really interesting shift that happens when we just talk about values.
Hmm. Okay, so that's kind of a tenet of your program, values.
Yeah, yeah, it sure is. How are you showing up? You say you value this, but you're doing that over there, right?
Oh, okay. And um, how can you know, how can a 14 or 15-year-old know what their values are? Is it up to parents to sort of instill that?
I think it's part of the family culture, right? Like, what do we value as a family? What if I'm a teenager, like, what am I experiencing, witnessing around me, right? What is my family showing me, not saying to me? What is my family showing me is
Hmm.
important in life,
Hmm.
right? Are they showing me that family time is important? Are they showing me that them being on their phones after a long day is more important than being with me? Are they showing me that money is important and money fixes everything? Or are they
Mm.
showing me that at all cost, family comes first, I come first, and us sitting down at the family table every evening and spending a half hour of quality time is the most important part of the day? What are we showing our kids?
So it's not what we say, it's what we do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Kids are smart. They make that
Yeah.
connection. Yeah.
Right. They're sort of like they're smarter than they even realize because they're sponges.
Oh, yeah.
So they're taking it in. I mean, if you think about it, um, a young kid, 5, 6 years old, doesn't have the cognitive capacity to reason, so they just sit there and watch.
Mhm. And then they say things that make you super uncomfortable as a parent, like this. This is what my 5-year-old said to me recently. Mommy, you break a lot of promises. I'm like, what do you mean I break a lot of promises? That's definitely not something that I want to be known for. Right. And I
Mhm.
can't tell her she's not right because that is her perception and perception is reality. So I ask her, what do you mean I break a lot of promises? Well, you keep telling me that you'll play with me later, but then you don't.
Mhm. I have a
So I
feeling she was right.
so I say things like, yeah, I'll play with you later. And then and it's right. I say it to kind of pacify her. Right. And then I'm like, whoa, really need to watch what I'm saying because she will ask me this during the day when I'm working or I'm doing some other things. Um, and I'll say, yeah, we'll do that later. But right now, mommy's working. Even at that young age, they can connect what you say with what you do.
I'm glad you brought that up. I think that there's a part of us as parents that feel like we need to be right all the time, and we need to maintain authority all the time. So the reflex is to say something like, "Well, no, mommy doesn't break promises. What I do is fill in the blank of some adult answer. Let me ask you, what was your child right? Were you breaking promises
Yeah,
a little bit?"
she was absolutely right. And I think it's very important in that moment that we acknowledge where we are wrong. If we want our kids to own up and have accountability and be responsible in their lives, we have to show them what that means. And it doesn't always mean that just because you're the adult or you're the parent that you're always right. And I think one thing that parents might not acknowledge enough is that our kids teach us just as much about ourselves as we teach them about themselves, right? And they also teach us a lot about life that maybe we didn't see from a different perspective. We don't give them that credit because we think that because we're parents, we are here and we
Mhm.
can never be here. We always have to maintain this. And if we ever should say, you're right, I was wrong, or oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, then we are diminishing our authority, right?
Mhm.
And I think if we want our kids to be better leaders, we have to show them what leadership is. And it's admitting when you're wrong, right?
So we instill a almost a power struggle because when push comes to shove, I need to kind of win the argument. And that's what a good parent does, right? I need to know, um, I need to be smarter than my child.
Yep. And because kids are so observant and they know when your words match your actions, there's going to be a trust erosion that happens over time as your child develops into an adolescent and a teenager. They're going to be like, my parent is
Right.
a bullshitter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Yes.
always saying things and not doing them. They're gonna see through that eventually. And then you may find yourself in a situation where you don't have a great relationship with your teenager and you're wondering, where did we go wrong?
Mhm. Mhm. Right. Don't BS your kids.
If they're lying to me a lot. Who taught them that?
Right. And adolescence is a time of individuation, right? It's a time where they're becoming their own people. And you kind of alluded to it. As parents, there's no blueprint for that. How to passing the torch,
Yep.
changing how we approach our children. Like we know in theory, yeah, my kid's becoming his own person, but letting that happen.
Yep. And partnering with them, right? We're in this parenting mode. I'm the parent. I give the answers, I give the direction, I dictate how things go. And then when your teenager starts to push back and you continue that parenting mindset, that's when the turbulence and the power struggle like can get really intense. Um, because you're not like meeting them and seeing them for the person they're trying to develop into.
Hmm.
You're seeing them as the child who still needs the the authority figure, and they need a partner, right?
Right. They need a partner, even if, and tell me what you think about this, even if they're a little naive, and even if what they're saying seems sort of they're shooting for the stars, or they don't really or they don't understand the full implication of what they're saying, we can
Right.
still partner with that. There's a tendency to squash naivete. And
Yes.
my kids, and so let's say your kid says, yeah, I really want to be in the music industry. Well, that's not a good idea, and that's a long shot, and sort of basically be discouraging.
Right. And the question should be, what does that look like?
Hmm.
What are some things you're going to have to do? You're going to have to accomplish in order to make that dream happen. And as they start to pick that apart, they may come upon the decision on their own.
Right,
Yeah, this might not be the
right,
right thing for me. You can give them a research
right.
project, right, to explore.
And then you've partnered with them, and you've remained their partner and their advocate.
Yes.
And that's something um it's not up to us as parents to teach our kids all about life all the time. It's up to us to help them to recover from it and to support them as they have their experiences.
Yes, to guide them through that growth, right? Because none of us are really going to embrace growth unless we experience it firsthand. So
Right.
you can
Right.
give your opinion and your thoughts and your input as a parent, but they still need to experience it. So no matter how many times you say, don't push the red button, don't go there, don't do that, they need to know what happens when the button is pushed. It's part of the brain development of a teenager. It's part of the neuro pathway, the different things that are happening as that brain is developing. They can't just take what's given to them. We don't want to train them to take what's given to them. We want to train them to be critical thinkers. We want to train them to push the boundaries and learn so that they can then thrive in 20 years, right? Because the world's going to be a different place in 20 years. And if all they're doing is
Right.
taking marching orders, who are they going to be in 20 years?
Hmm.
Someone,
And so that means, for instance, while technology might be a struggle, maybe we need to learn about what they're doing on their phone, learn about how they're using technology, and not just ban them from it.
yes. Yes and no. So the whole like if we're talking about technology, like social media use and things like that, I mean, there are studies, solid studies that are tied to the mental health of young people who do not actually socialize. This part of life as the brain is developing requires socialization. It requires actual hands-on lived experiences that cannot be experienced in a phone.
Mhm.
And the more that they do that within their phone, the more withdrawn, the more social anxiety, the more things that become exacerbated in their day-to-day lives. They've got to put the phone down, right? They have to understand that life is not what's curated on social media. They have to
Mhm.
understand that you cannot put all of your social life in a box on a phone and expect that to create success for you over time. So I definitely think keeping them safe on social media is very important because there's way too much access to too many things that aren't truly real, right?
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. So when we have the information, we get to keep them safe, and we get to have, and I think, some parents listening to this, it might trigger something that maybe it sounds like we're saying, we're advocating for passive parenting and let your kids do what they want and don't interfere.
No.
And that's not the case. It's actually the opposite. There's a lot of structure we can
Yes.
implement without trying to control them and tell them who they are.
Correct. Yes. It's a tango. It's like a dance that you're doing in this phase of life with your young person. And you want to get it right, right? And why do
Mhm.
you want to get it right? Because in 10 years, 15 years, when they're off and they have a family of their own, you want them to come back home. You want to enjoy those
Totally.
small, you want some of that back, right? You don't want them to never want to come home.
We want our kids to like us.
Yeah. But we're not their friend.
And I guess what I'm getting at is it's not that we want to be we're not friends with our kids, but if we can have situations that are just pleasant and that are just focused on fun, our kids might like us. And
Yeah.
to that issue of we want them to we want them to be around later. Later we need them, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Later we want them in our life.
No,
That's
it's
one way or
chill.
the other. Be mindful of doing things that calm their nervous system
Yeah.
instead of jack it up.
Yeah. And how do we jack it up? We're like, I can't believe you did that. We
Mhm.
judge them. Maybe we even shame them a little bit, like, oh my gosh, you should be so embarrassed that you did, like the types of things that I sometimes hear parents say, even at a young age. What are you,
Mhm.
stupid? Why'd you do that?
Mhm.
Oh, those kinds of things don't make you likable,
Right.
right? But some parents overcorrect in a way that, like, they don't want to be unliked. So they are like, hey dude, let's go, don't worry
Right.
that you didn't do good on your report card. That's not important. You don't really have to go to college. Let's go to Starbucks. Like,
Right.
that's overcorrection.
Right. And meanwhile the kid has no expectations and no drive.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's a dance, it's a balance.
It is definitely a dance.
Um so you're a coach, I'm a therapist and a coach. In an ideal world, would parents be doing what we do, or is it good to have additional adults
In an
in a
ideal
child's life?
I think in an ideal world, parents would not be doing what we're doing because
Okay.
there's an emotional tie, right?
Mhm.
And no matter how hard you might try, you can't make the emotional piece go away when you're parenting or when you're partnering or when you're guiding your kids because you're emotionally connected to them and them to you. So having a coach creates a space where a young person knows that they can show up authentically, that they're not going to be judged for anything, even if their parents aren't judgmental. They just have someone that they can go to that can act as um, their cheerleader, their teammate in their own success without any ulterior motive
Mhm.
whatsoever. Right? We see our clients for who they are, who they want to be, and we help them connect the two.
Mhm.
And we, in turn, enrich and improve the relationships that our clients have with their parents and in their family unit.
Right. Okay.
So to have that partner as a parent and as a teenager, like, that's actually really an important piece, I would think.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So there's some things we can do because we're not parents.
absolutely. And
Eh,
sometimes we're saying the same things, right?
right.
Mhm.
And as a coach, I imagine you would not coach your kids.
I cannot coach my kids
Right.
because I have an emotional tie.
Um, what's the difference in your eyes between coaching and therapy?
Um, well, when I think of therapy, I think of clean roots, right? And if we have gone through some sort of experience in life that we've kind of stored away, compartmentalized, we don't want to deal with, it's kind of like digging in the mud and cleaning up the roots and making the soil habitable for the tree to later grow, right? And I think of coaching as meeting at the ground level. What are we working with? Meeting them with what they've got, their strengths, focusing on that. Sometimes we might point at a root, we might point at a
Mm,
weakness,
hmm.
to give a different viewpoint and create a mindset shift for our clients. But it's really like, where are you at and how can we push you forward from here? We don't do a lot of reaching back. The therapy is the reaching back, the coaching
Hmm.
is the pushing forward.
Okay.
That's how I see it.
Right. So coaching coaching is about the present and future. Therapy is often about the past.
It can be. Yeah.
And um, therapy is technically often about dysfunction, where coaching is more about thriving.
It can be, yeah. And I think for teenagers, coaching is also quicker to action, right?
Hmm.
As you say, like, what are your values? How are you going to show up as those? Oh, okay. I can do that. Like I could walk out of here right now and I could do that. But sometimes with therapy, it takes longer and it's deeper and it can for a teenager where they're at with their heightened sense of emotions and feelings, can sometimes kind of like shake the beehive. And that's not
Hmm.
fun, right?
Yes. Yeah. In other words, coaching can kind of keep it simple.
Yeah.
Adolescents are, again, they're developmentally becoming individuals. Coaching just embraces that.
Yeah.
Who are you? What do you want to do?
Yeah.
And like, what does that look like? How does a 16-year-old know what they want or who they are? What kind of values do you see a lot of teenagers moving toward?
I think, it's very individualized, but I would say the most common ones are family, relationships, trust, um, success, spirituality or religion, integrity, community, things like that. Although there are so many values to choose from in the exercises that we do with our clients, those are some of the most common ones. Love is another one.
And
Um,
like, how does that like how does that help? I'm picturing myself as a teenager, and I was just anxious and wanting everyone to like me. It seems like I couldn't really see past that.
yeah, 'cause as a teenager, you're oftentimes focused on the outside while also appearing to be very self-absorbed, but
Hmm.
you're relating yourself to what's on the outside. How can I fit in? How can I get people to like me? How can I get myself into this group, right? And you're not showing up authentically. But when you can have your values reflected back to you, and I know that my 5 core values are love, trust, friendship, integrity, and success,
Mm-hmm.
then when I am going to make a decision, I can ask myself, does this mirror who I am? Because these 5 values, that's my authenticity.
Hmm.
That's my ticket to get to the place that I belong, whatever that is. It might not be that group over there, but this is my ticket. If I can show up as these 5 things in my decisions and in my behavior on a daily basis, I'm going to attract the people who are going to support me and who are going to be the best match for me. And then I am genuinely and authentically going to be successful. I'm going to be loving. I'm going to be all of these things that I say my values are. And that right there, the experience that you attract to you by showing up as your values generates happiness and a feeling of success, and over time connects you with your purpose.
Yeah. And I find when working with that's so profound, and I find when working with young people, they're not going to get it perfect, but just planting that seed, just the knowledge of these are my values, and knowing when I'm going toward them, and knowing if I'm not going toward them,
Yeah.
eventually causes a shift.
Yes.
It's once we've instilled that.
Yeah. And it's really important that anybody listening to this understand that if your kid works with a coach, right? And they learn these things. And I'm not saying that all coaches teach these things, but if they learn these things, you might not always see the impact right away. So we know that education and self-awareness it's a cumulative process. So the day that you plant the seed, just like you just said, the seed is not the day that you harvest the fruit, right? It's a process. But the things that I think a teenager can learn about themselves in working through a program like yours or mine is that is something that will eventually go off like a light bulb, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's going to connect at some point.
And it's such a good chance it's going to connect maybe sooner than it did for us because we didn't really have programs like this. I learned about core values when I was training as a therapist, I think. Just didn't acceptance commitment therapy didn't even occur to me.
Yep.
We didn't really learn that. Our parents didn't really learn that.
Yep. And this is how we prepare our kids for the future, right? We
Yeah.
see so much divisive things, so many divisive things going on right now in the world climate. And we want our kids to be critical thinkers. We want them to be able to know right away when something is right for them or not right for them. And these types of opportunities are what help them paint that picture for themselves.
So Jessica, tell everyone how to find you if they're interested in coaching for themselves or their
Um,
kids.
okay. So you can check out our website at highlightcoaching.com. It's spelled phonetically, so it's HILITE coaching.com. You can also find us on all the social media. We're everywhere. We're on YouTube,
Yeah.
Facebook, LinkedIn, all that fun stuff. Instagram, TikTok.
Thanks so much for being here today.
You're welcome.
This
Thank
was
you for
great.
having me. This was a great conversation. I love talking about this kind of stuff.
I know. I can tell. It comes very naturally to you, and it's it's very inspiring. And let's do it again.
All right, I'm down.
Okay.
Nice chatting with
See
you.
you soon.